So we were talking about the hope for tomorrow and the help that it brings us today, and how all the glory of creation testifies to the source of this hope and help, and how the law specifically reveals this source of hope and help. You know, Psalm 27 says, "Some boast in chariots and some in horses, but we will boast in the name of the Lord our God." That's where our hope and help come from. But there's temptations that would bring us away from that only source of safety. Remember, we mentioned we're looking for a safe store for our value in the fluctuating market and the fluctuations of life, that would spill that safety and security and peace into our present day and only increase in value. And some would tempt us away from the only safe store for value, the only place that would give us that hope and that help. Proverbs 5, 1 through 6 says, my son, give attention to my wisdom, incline your heart, or incline your ear to understanding. And he warns, look, the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and smoother than oil is her speech. Her feet go down to death, and her steps take hold of Sheol, of death. She does not ponder the path of life, doesn't think the cost of these present actions, going to lose it all. Her ways are unstable, and she doesn't know it. Later on in 22 to 23, the one who falls into this trap, his own iniquities will capture him, the wicked, and he will be held with the cords of his sin, and he will die for lack of instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he will go astray. Look, the instruction is there, and we just so often fail to receive it. So remember the store of hope. Remember where our hope and help comes from, and don't be enticed. Whether here in this specific example, it's the one trying to draw you into this wrong relationship. But these temptations can come from varied sources. But anything that stands between you and keeping your eyes fixed on that heavenward hope that would lead us right. I mean, remember David was saying that you will not abandon me to Sheol. You will not abandon me when the cords of death encompass me. These things would lead you into the very things David's saying that he leads us out of. And her feet go down to take hold of Sheol. Do we want to follow into this? So if we do, the very cords of our own sin will hold us captive. So there's temptations that bring our focus and attention away from the eternal and into the momentary, the temporal, what can and will be soon wiped away as the place that holds our treasure in life. And then there's also the direct challenge of the authority. Like, well, who are you to say that is where our hope and our help come from? Why should I believe you? Why believe this Bible? That its law is perfect and blameless. It restores the soul. Here I look at Matthew 21, 23, 20 to 27, and maybe take a similar tact here. Jesus is challenged when he'd gone into Jerusalem to overturn the money changers' tables. And the Pharisees and other leaders were confronting him, saying, by what authority are you doing these things? And he responds and says, I'll answer your question if you answer me this. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or was it from men? And we know the story. They reasoned together with themselves, and then they thought, well, if we say it's from heaven, then he would say, well, why don't you believe me then? But if we say that it's from men, then we fear the people. They won't have that. So they looked at him and said the only thing they felt they could, and we don't know. And Jesus responded, well, neither will I answer you. We won't entertain the discussion because they're not doing it honestly. By what authority do we say that Jesus Christ gives us our hope for tomorrow and our help in the present moment? Well, let me ask this first. Love thy neighbor, was it from heaven or men? Because Matthew also in chapter 22 says the whole law and the prophets is summed up in this. So if we're going to talk about if the law is from him, let me just narrow it down to this. The love thy neighbor, is it from heaven or from men? Because I know what God means by love, and I know what God means by thy, and I know what God means by neighbor. But apart from God, if men are concocting this, what can man mean by love in a purely closed, materialistic world, biologically determined? What is love? Okay, well, what is thy? There's a lot of problems with pronouns these days, but I just be like, what is it to be to thy, like me? Who am I? What is man? How can I define myself? I know what man is by how God describes man, but if we're each left to define ourselves by ourselves, that's a confusing question. What about neighbor? Jesus answered this one. How does man answer who our neighbor is? Do we just live for ourselves? Are we all individuals, or is everything our neighbor, from plants, trees, rocks, and animals? Where are the lines? And that could enter into a more interesting discussion. But the challenge shouldn't stand. We know where our hope comes from, and I want to encourage you all to dig and draw from that well in our daily lives, that our hope for tomorrow infuses and pours into our daily circumstance, giving us help for every trial and making every joy no longer something to mourn either as a transitory event, but something that just celebrates just a little taste of something that's eternal to come. So I hope you all, pray you all will be active in the sharing of your faith, and I will catch you all on the next video.